Hello, everybody. Welcome to our webinar for today. We're going to give it maybe a couple of seconds to see if anybody else is joining us. I know we have a couple more people registered. All right, so before I introduced our speaker for today, I wanted to tell you a little bit about the seminar series and then introduce myself. So my name is Dr. Adriana Bisbal, and I am an assistant professor of biology here at the University of Houston downtown. And I am also a member of the leadership team for the Synergy program, which is a Howard Hughes Medical Institute funded grant project for the College of Science and Technology and the Department of Natural Sciences to increase inclusive excellence, to increase representation and diversity of all our STEM students, and to interrogate and make changes to make sure that our STEM education is inclusive and it is allowing everyone to succeed. So as part of that, we have a series of diversity in STEM speakers. This is our second speaker of that series, and I will introduce today Dr. Danielle Twum. So hailing from Ghana, West Africa, Dr. Twum received her Bachelor of Arts in Biology from Vassar College, where she studied the effects of climate change on coral bleaching. She then received her PhD in Cancer Immunology from the University of Buffalo, where she studied immunology of breast cancer metastasis. She currently works as a Molecular Science Liaison at the Caris Life Sciences. She is also an American Association for the Advancement of Science, IF and Then Ambassador, which is an initiative aimed at increasing visibility of women in STEM as role models for young girls. If she's not reading, you'll find Dr. Twum enjoying Indian and Korean food, having a dance party to some old school K-pop, or getting lost in the wormhole that is the BBC Earth YouTube channel. So I'm excited to welcome her. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you so much for the lovely introduction. Very honored to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for joining us for this session. So there is not going to be a formal presentation. We're going to have an informal conversation with Dr. Twum. Dr. Usman is going to be monitoring the Q&A. So if everybody can take a moment to find the little button that says Q&A, you can post a question, and you can also post a question anonymously. We will have a broad time for questions at the end. But if you feel the need to ask a question that's very relevant to the conversation that's currently going on, please go ahead and type that in the chat, and Dr. Usman will let us know when it's time to address those questions. So Dr. Twum, let's start by, why don't you give us a little trajectory, a little story about your trajectory into science, right? What drove you to science? How did you make those decisions that that's what you wanted to do? I think that's a story that many students struggle with, so we would love to hear what your story is.
Absolutely. So I've always, to my knowledge, I've always been interested in science. I was that little girl who was always asking questions. And I was very, very lucky that my family never told me to keep quiet, which I realize is a privilege because some people didn't have that. I was always bothering my parents. And to shut me up, they put the Guinness Book of Records in my hand. That is an effective way of shutting up a child because there is so much information. And through the Guinness Book of Records and also through the Encyclopedia Britannica, I'm dating myself right now. But through those two books, I realized that there was so much going on in the world that I wanted to understand. And so I thought when I was younger, I thought my love for science meant I would become a medical doctor. That's how it translated to my head. I'm from Ghana, West Africa. And growing up, I didn't know that you could be a scientist. I knew you could be a medical doctor or engineer if you like science, but I didn't know that there was something else to it. So when I emigrated to the United States, I went to Vassar College in Poughkeepsie, New York, with the express intent of being pre-med. So I went in, I was a biology major, I was a French minor because you could have fun with that. But I went in thinking I was pre-med, and then I took one class with a professor, Professor Jody Schwartz, who, funnily enough, I'm going to be talking to her later today. But Jody, she did research on sea anemones, which is where Nemo lived. And I said, that's kind of weird. But you know what? It's going to look good on my med school application. So yes, let's absolutely do a summer research experience with Jody. So that's what I did. And after that, I said, you know what? This research stuff looks really cool. I'm interested. And then Jody said, no, no, no. You like research in my lab. You don't like research in general. So for your junior year summer, go do research outside Vassar. See how you feel about that. And so I applied to a bunch of programs, and I got into the Roswell Park Comprehensive Cancer Institute. They have a summer apprenticeship program. And I mean, Roswell Park is in Buffalo. Everybody's heard of Buffalo, especially when it comes to snow. But Buffalo in the summer is stunning. And that's how they hooked me, because I went there in the summer. And so I went there, and cancer, the reason why I chose cancer, someone asked, well, from sea anemones to cancer, Jody asked me, what is something you've always been curious about, understanding? And I lost an uncle to a brain tumor. He was really young, in his early 30s. And I feel like that is something that a lot of cancer researchers have in common. We all have had a personal connection to this horrible disease. So I went to Roswell with one question: what is cancer? Help me understand it. And then I would, assuage my curiosity and then come back and, go back into the world of marine biology. But of course, life will never, ever be that simple. I went there with one question. I left with more questions. So I was like, you know what, Jody, sorry to do this to you, but the ocean is cool, but cancer is cooler. So I ended up going back to Roswell Park, and I was in the Department of Immunology, which is basically the study of the immune system in cancer and how to make it work better, because cancer is really smart and great at hiding from your immune system. So what I was studying was trying to make the surveillance system of your body work better so it can detect cancer faster. But by the end of my PhD, I was burned out. I didn't want to hear cancer. 6.5 years, I think. And doing a PhD is very fun, it's very rewarding, but it's very isolating. There are a lot of ups and downs. And so I said, let me take a little sabbatical. And when I was in grad school, I realized I also liked communicating science. So I thought I would get a job that would allow me to communicate science, but still keep a foot in the bench, near the bench. So I got a job as a field application scientist for a small startup here in the Bay Area. And they worked on, I kid you not, magnetic levitation. It's not science fiction. I remember when I read the job description, I was like, these people are having me on. There's no way this is real. But it was, and it worked really well. They were using magnetic levitation to separate cells based on how heavy they are. And you'd ask, why would you even want to do this? But before any drug is ever tested on the whole human body, you have to test it on the cells you want to target. So then you have to be able to separate the cells, because there is no part of your body that has just like one cell type. There are dozens of cell types in one aspect. So if you need cell A, you have to sort through the entire soup of cells. And so I worked there for a little bit, and a field application scientist role is basically what I wanted. Is you talk to people about the product, you do experiments with them, but you also take the feedback back to the company, and then you ran quality control experiments and other test questions you might have. So it gave me a chance to still do bench work, but also, communicate science with different audiences. But then whilst I was at Levitas, I got a great opportunity to move to Caris Life Sciences to be a Molecular Science Liaison, which is a fancy way of saying when doctors sequence patient tumors with my company and their results, I help doctors answer any questions they might have about the results that have been given, which is also another aspect of science communication, because you're talking to people who know this stuff, and you know it from the molecular angle, they know it from the medical angle. So you have to bring that together. And it also involves, liaising with the sales team, with corporate team. So it gives you a broad exposure to corporate America, so that's my long trajectory.
That's great. That sounds like a great trajectory. I heard some key elements there. It sounds like you had some great mentoring, right? That you had, you were maybe lucky and found great mentoring. Were there any moments, we're gonna go straight deep here. Were there any moments of doubt, right? Did you have the opposite? Did you have moments where you thought this science is not for me, this is not where I belong? And kind of how did you negotiate moments of self-doubt and still pursue what you wanted to do?
I can actually tell you to the year, it was my 4th year of graduate school. Nothing worked. Absolutely nothing. 6 months of negative data. And, you've been at that point, I'd been there for 4 years. I had a research question. I had an experimental design. I knew what I was doing, but I was getting 0 data. And all around me, my fellow cohort mates were getting good data. And it's hard not to compare yourself to others. You really try not to. I try honestly not to. When I was younger, my mom told me I'm in competition with nobody but myself. And so I am my biggest critic, but it was just in a field like academia where publish or perish, I needed the data and I wasn't getting anything. And so I remember thinking, maybe, you know what, I should just get a master's and just leave. It's fine. What I have is enough. And honestly, if it wasn't for the community that I had in Buffalo and my family, because my family did not live in Buffalo, but I also created a family in Buffalo, I would have probably quit my PhD and just had a master's, which is not a bad thing, actually. But it would have been not the goal I was aiming for. And so in those moments, it was my community that held me up. And my community consisted of the head of administration, the Department of Immunology. She would give me Kit Kat every day. She'd say, it might be a tough day, but here's some chocolate. The principal secretary, she became my unofficial aunt. She would always ask me if I was eating, if I was taking care of myself, because once things stop working, you stop looking after yourself and you're just focused on the science and what am I doing wrong? What am I doing wrong? So then you start to fall apart, but you're not even seeing it until it's too late. So my community absolutely kept me going. Would not have made it without them.
I identify a lot with that story. That's very important in grad school. I remember walking into my PhD mentor's office midway through year 3 and saying, I think I'm done. I don't think I do this. And he just laughed and said, oh, thank God. I was worried about you. You hadn't told me this yet. It's a rite of passage in grad school. You hadn't walked into my office to said you wanted to quit, and I was worried there was something wrong with you. So I know you're normal. Let's talk about it. And this is how it was so reassuring, right? That he said that it wasn't, oh, you can't hack it, you know.
Right.
But you had to be comfortable enough with your mentor.
Yes.
To be able to do that. So
absolutely.
So let's talk maybe a little bit more about mentorship, the official and the unofficial kind, right? So what do you think is the importance of mentors? And then you gave us some great examples of how you find these informal mentors. So how do you find them? Who are your mentors, or who can be your mentors, and what is their importance?
Okay. So to me, a mentor is an example of where you want to be, and their path is an example of how your path could be. And their role in your life is to help you navigate things that they have already navigated and have figured out an easier way to do it. Because your path will be different from your mentors. It's never going to be the same. And you might have different challenges, but the world revolves, and most people kind of face similar challenges. So if somebody has already written a shortcut to overcome a challenge, why don't you just hack that? And instead of trying to go through it yourself. And so that, to me, that's what a mentor is someone who has been able to navigate a lot of challenges and is where you want to be, kind of. So then you have an idea of the challenges coming up, you have an idea of the length of the journey, you have an idea of what you need to bring along. And they will also tell you, so that, because they probably got to a point where they didn't have the resources they needed, and then they had to find it. But if they tell you ahead of time, hey, when you get to this point, you're going to need to do this, then you're already coming in prepared and you're coming in to already excel. So for me, Jody, one thing I loved about Jody that always came across to me is Jody always seemed to look into my future for me. Every conversation we had, it was as if she was dreaming for me, as opposed to me just seeing what I was going to do next year. Jody was seeing 10, 20 years into my future. And I have always been grateful to her for that. I found Jody because of, college, because I was a student in her class and I was very interested in her work. So I would go to her office and talk to her, found a way to work with her in her lab, and ended up doing my thesis work in her lab. So if you want to find a mentor, find someone who's doing something that you're interested in and see if you can strike up a conversation. People want to help you succeed. If you're finding someone who doesn't want to help you succeed, don't contact them. But most people, to my knowledge, want to help others succeed, because we don't want you to go through the same trials and tribulations we went through. It's no fun. So why would we want to wish it on you? So when it comes to formal mentors, I think if you can find someone who's doing something that is slightly like what you want to do, reach out to them. LinkedIn is a great tool to just type in keywords and you can find somebody who's doing what you're doing. And then you can reach out to them, see if you can set up. Right now, everything is virtual. So most people can spare 15 minutes of their time to talk to you, and then see if you can strike up a relationship with them, and then go on from there.
It sounds like great advice for our students. So let's think maybe for that time period in your life, right? Your undergraduate education.
Yeah.
You think of a do-over, right? If you had to do it all over again, what would be your do-over as an undergraduate student? What would you do differently?
I would go abroad. I'm very mad at myself that I let my fear of not being able to meet all my requirements stop me from going abroad. I'm not saying don't meet your requirements. I don't want your professors to come after me, but I could have made it work. But I had changed so much of my journey. I went in pre-med and now I was doing research. There was just so much change. And I listened to the fear in my head, like, no, you're doing too much. Just stay here, focus on getting your requirements done. But I could have gone, I would have gone abroad. I would have gone to a French speaking country, lived there for at least a semester, and then come back, a nice chic French scientist or something. But yes, that's what I would do over is go abroad.
Sounds lovely. I was pursuing my French in college when I was advised strongly by the advising office to drop it, because what could a bio major ever do with French? That's something I wish I could do.
At
Maybe we can
Vassar,
still do it. We should go together.
oh yeah, please let's totally do it. At Vassar, actually, you are required to take, I forget the percentage, but there's a percentage of classes you have to take outside your major. So being a French minor actually helped me because then I fulfilled all those requirements. But I got way more out of those French classes than I thought. I took classes spanning French fashion, the history of colonialism with French people. With the French country, with France colonizing a lot of African countries, Haiti, and then French cinema. There was so much I learned and still use. I still partake in, I listen to French music sometimes when I'm in the mood and I'm feeling all chic and stuff. So I still got out of it. And I think as a scientist, we do need an outlet, because science is very creative, but it can also be very stifling. And so having all these non-science stuff, which is still crazy because language is very scientific, that it gives you a chance to give your brain a different way to think, and then you can bring that to your work. So I want to yell at the person who told you to drop your French classes.
So I just want to take a moment and remind everybody that we are monitoring the Q&A. If you have a question, you can ask a question. You can also ask a question anonymously, and Dr. Usman would let us know. All right, let's see. So let's keep thinking about our students now in that vein of what would you do differently? And maybe let's try to be proactive with our students. Can you think of 3 big pieces of advice? So 3 tips that you can give students now. What can they do now to prepare for a path in a career like yours? If they want to pursue a PhD, and if they want to work in a science company like the one you work at, what are things that they can do right now?
One of the biggest things you can do is immerse yourself in different lab environments, because if you want to get a PhD in cancer immunology or in any biological science that requires lab work, you have to feel what it means to be a graduate student. And yes, if you're a summer apprentice, it's not going to be the same thing, but it's at least it's closer to the experience. And then do the day-to-day. If you can do that for 3 months, you can do it for 6 to 7 years, for how long it takes. So find an internship that you're interested in, that in a lab that's studying something you're interested in. Make sure you get paid for it, and then absolutely do that. The other thing I can recommend is find a mentor. This is not crazy. Yes, you can go at it alone, but you will go further if you have help. So find a mentor, find someone who's doing something you're interested in, and talk to them. Ask them how they got to where they're going. For me, I followed a subject that I had passion about. I had a passion to understand how cancer worked. I had a passion to help people spend more time with your families by, helping find a cure for cancer. So that fueled me. So find a mentor who's doing something you're interested in, and then go for it. And then lastly, if it's possible, don't compare yourself to other people. Your journey is so unique. I mean, and it's so hard. We're bombarded with so much information about other people with social media. And I just want you to remember, social media usually are people's highlight reels, and they never show the bloopers. And if they do show the bloopers, it's at night when no one is looking at it. They do that for TV too. So just, do an internship. If you want to go if you want to do what I'm doing, find a mentor, and then don't compare yourself, because this is your own journey and you're going to be fabulous.
Thank you. Those are fantastic tips. I'm going to pause for a moment. Are there any questions? Anybody have something to ask specifically about advice for undergraduate students? I know we have several of them in our webinar audience today. So if you have a question, go ahead and type it in the Q&A. All right, so as we let students think, Dr. Usman, you'll let us know if a question pops up. Let's switch gears a little bit, and why don't you tell us a little bit about your advocacy work? Can you tell us about the If-Then program? What is it, and how did you get into that type of work?
Yeah, so I don't know where to start. So with If-Then, no. Let me take it back. Let me take it all the way back to grad school. In graduate school, I noticed that Buffalo is a very Black city, and there were 3 graduate students who were Black in the entire graduate program of 5 programs. 3 Black students, and 2 of us were women, 1 dude, and the 2 women were always being confused for each other. It's very annoying and trite and dated. Come on, do better. But that always, it didn't sit right with me. I was like, how do you have a Black city, but your graduate student does not reflect the city? What are you doing wrong? And so I decided to be part of the high school summer program, because I was like, college is cool, but high school, I think that's where you can start influencing children. You can show them that, you can look like me and become a scientist. And so I was very much involved in in developing the curriculum for the high school summer program, and being somebody the kids could talk to with regards to their fears of being a scientist, their fears of being Black in science. And that's where I think my advocacy started. I didn't set out to be a certain way. I just wanted other Black kids to have the same opportunities that I've had, because I know the power of having a PhD. A PhD is like a master key. There is no door that won't open for you, because they can't say you're not qualified. You are very qualified if you have a PhD. And doors sometimes will try to close to you because of the color of your skin or because of how you look like. And I don't want that for anybody. I want the world to be everyone's oyster. And so after graduate school, this program, the If Then ambassadorship, I think it was advertised. I found in a newsletter from the AAAS. And I said, why not? Because this initiative was literally aiming, I thought high school was where it's at. No, they're trying to influence middle school girls, because apparently at that stage, young girls are developing their character. They're seeing, whether I like science, I like math, I like this kind of stuff. So I believe there are 125 of us, 125 women, and they're all doing so many cool things with their degrees. You're going to actually talk to one of my good friends who is also an event ambassador, Dr. J. Gardner. She's going to be there later. She's going to be in the seminar too at some point, I think next week or somewhere. But Jay combines art with science, and her story is so fascinating. I think it's a story that everyone needs to hear, that you don't need to sacrifice your creative side just to be a scientist. And there's this other lady who also has a PhD, but runs a dance studio because she uses dance to teach kids about STEM. I think that is so fascinating. There's a lady who works in the Fermi lab. I mean, it's such a wide array of women. And I think if I had this group as role models when I was younger, I think I would be at NASA right now. Seriously, but I think seeing is a great way of believing that you can do it. And being able to see that there's all these careers available, especially for women, and these are women who are willing to help you traverse any challenges. I think it's a very powerful thing, and I'm very honored that I am able to be a part of it.
Sounds like a great program. Maybe we can try to reach out to them and do something similar.
Yeah, you should.
For our students. So I think we have some questions.
We have a couple of questions. And I think I waited because I think they both kind of have nice tie-ins to the story you were just telling. So first one, what actions do you take when you're trying not to compare yourself to others? And I think I was thinking about that story about, when you were a little girl, and, that's a time when you are in constant comparison with the world, right? As if it ever stops. But but anyways, what do you do for yourselves so that you're trying not to compare yourself to others? And then the next question is a nice follow-up to that, actually.
Okay, so honestly, it's very hard not to. But one thing I do is I have a journal, and I write down 10 things I'm thankful for. I don't always do it every day, but I try to do it as often as possible. And I always go back to those journals to go see what I wrote. I pick a random page, and most of the time I'll write something I accomplished that I never thought I could. And then I look at that and I say, okay, I did this. It's hard. I was bullied very heavily when I was a kid. So I've always been okay being by myself, if that's a thing. And when my mom told me that I was in competition with nobody but myself, it really stuck to me. So whenever I feel like comparing myself to others, I remind myself that I am my greatest critic. So and I'm doing my best. I am trying, I know that I'm doing my best. And so that's why I tell myself all the time, I'm doing my best, even if it doesn't look like I'm not doing my best. And you have to be nice to yourself. The world doesn't say nice things to you, honestly. The world is full of negative emotions and negative words. So what I would say is be nice to yourself. I think there's a Pink song, that song she has, Perfect. And she says, you're so mean when you talk to yourself. And we need to stop that. So if you don't want to compare yourself to others, be nice to yourself. Say nice things.
Yes, I think that's great advice. So this one kind of follows up in some extent, because I think there's ways that I sort of see this intersecting, and that is the next question is, how do you manage your time? And was having to work an obstacle, because the stress of that gets you back into that sort of self-criticism, right?
So I just recently learned time management. I'm going to be very honest. When I was in college, my financial aid package included employment on campus. So Vassar had rules with regards to how many hours you could work at your job, and they monitored it because all the jobs were on campus. So it did take some maneuvering in terms of labs, because in addition to taking biology, physics, and chemistry, you had the labs afterwards. There were like 2-hour labs. So then I remember my first year, I would work in the gym from, I think, 8 to 11 p.m. because even if I wanted the afternoon sessions, I couldn't because I had labs. And as a result, because I knew that I would be, working in the gym that late, I would try and do my homework when I was sitting in the gym, because my job at the gym was just to check people in. So I would take my homework with me and do it there, because if I didn't do it then, when would I do it? I had French the next morning. I had French every morning at 9 a.m. When I was a first year. So yeah, it was really hard. I had to figure out different pockets of time to do my homework. And sometimes I failed. Actually, most of the time I failed, but I try. It does take some maneuvering. Right now, I manage my time heavily with calendars. Anytime someone wants to talk to me, I send them my Calendly and like put it on a calendar. Otherwise, I will forget, or I'll do something and I won't be able to make it. So if you can invest in a scheduler or a calendar or something like that and write it down. When you write things down and you check them off, it feels good. So I've learned that late, but I've learned it. So please learn it now so you don't have to be scrambling to finish your homework.
Oh, that is awesome. I've come to that very late as well. I wish I had discovered it half a lifetime ago. The next one's kind of you can kind of work with in a variety of ways, because it gets to the various challenges that we all meet when we're in intensive activities, whether it's school, certain kinds of work that take its toll not only on the labor you put in, but also the psychic energy that it draws from you. So that, Nathan asked, how do you deal with health-related setbacks that tend to influence your academic performance due to this kind of relentlessness of, if you lose a day, it feels like you lost the week. And that leads to poor grades. But you yourself, striving for excellence, are pushing to keep, going. But then that results in that kind of negative feedback loop where you hit a wall. It's Nathan goes on for much longer, but let's stop with that. And if it looks like you missed part of it, because I think what his thinking here is that we face that point where we don't know, going back to some of that first question, when to take care of ourselves in a way that is not feels self-destructive.
Yeah.
and I emphasize the word feels because it often isn't, but it feels that way. And your own personal stubbornness to push through actually becomes the thing that holds you back.
So that's a great question, Nathan. I actually, right before I finished my PhD, I was diagnosed with an autoimmune disease. And they told me it was stress related. And I was like, oh, really? What a shock. And the doctor told me that if I didn't calm down, I would lose my eye. And so, I had to, it delayed my thesis writing. I had to slow down massively. It made me feel really terrible because in my head, I was supposed to graduate by a certain time and I wasn't. But I recently read a quote that said, if you don't take a day off, your body will decide when to do it for you, and you will not have any control over that. So, I mean, I think that most professors are understanding and considerate and reasonable. So if you are not feeling good and let's say you're going to have your grades delayed or it's going to impact your grades, ask for some grace if you can. And I think they will understand that because it's health related, you will need some extra accommodations to figure it out. And don't beat yourself up because you're not feeling well. You didn't intentionally get sick. You didn't wake up and say, oh, I want to be sick today. No one wakes up and says that. So give yourself grace. It's so difficult because this world is always go, 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 go. But you need to breathe. You need to be still sometimes. And it's when you're still that your body heals. So try not to beat yourself up too much if you do get sick and things slip up. Professors and life actually will give you a chance to, make up for it when you're better. And because you're better, you will do excellent work as opposed to you trying to do it when you're sick and you won't be at your best. And then, you have to do it all over again. So that's what I can say.
So while you were talking, a related question came up, and then I'll go back to a previous one.
Yeah.
A student is writing here that he was also diagnosed with an autoimmune disease, which delayed the start of grad school that he was accepted into. And so I think in light of that experience, in which, coupled to that is that sense of deep disappointment, and probably, a sense of impending failure. How do you bounce back from that state? In addition to what you kind of answered it toward the end of the last part. So I think you anticipated his question a little bit, but if you can add just a touch more. What comes to your mind?
I always say, if you want to cry, cry. Crying is it's free therapy. Nature gave us that for free. But after you're done crying, just pull yourself together, because regardless of everything that's going on, you're still here and you're still, you have today and you have now. So take advantage of of the now. Take advantage of where you are now and then move on from there. Disappointments are rough. I honestly cry, eat ice cream, and read a book. That it's like in that order. I'll do it like that. And then I will usually sit down and take a pen and paper and then, write down how I'm feeling and then bunch it up and throw it away. And then I also write down what I can do next that is within my power, because not everything is, we can't control everything. So take some strength from the fact that there are still circumstances within your power that you can change, that you can fix. And then just work on on those small things. There will be small wins, but they'll make you feel better. And then eat ice cream.
Yes.
Or chocolate.
Or chocolate, yes. Always find that
Or
food
chocolate.
that brings you home, so to speak. So changing gears a bit, we have a question in which coming as, and I feel this question strongly, I can already feel half a century ago, in regards to finding a mentor, what would be a great way to approach someone you're interested in? And the question here really gets at, how do I start the conversation?
Yeah.
You know, if you're a shy person, and I bet actually Dr. Visbal, I know she was shy once, and as was I. You know, and it's something difficult, right? You're interested in that. Actually, being interested in a professor is intimidating because you've already put something on them that you want to tap into, and that gets scary, right? So how do you start a conversation? You know, what do you think might be a good icebreaker that you have found useful?
I have found that showing interest in what the professor is doing is the greatest way to get their attention. We as scientists love talking about what we do. So if you can show even the slightest hint of interest, oh my goodness, you are our favorite. We want to talk to you. We want to hear about what you're doing. So I have never been shy, but I'm also an antisocial extrovert. So I understand the need to be like, I don't want to talk to you right now, or I'm a little, tired of socializing. But if you're shy, I think right now, the way things are, the virtual platforms have made it easier to communicate with different people. So, I mean, Twitter is a great place to find people who are doing interesting things. A lot of people's DMs are not open, so maybe you shouldn't go there. But LinkedIn is a more professional setting. So if you're interested in a professor's work or talking to somebody, I know there are templates of emails you can send if you don't want to, have to craft something from, on your own. There are ways you can take a message from the internet and then make it more personalized to the professor who you're interested in working with, and then start from there. Because if you show even the slightest interest in their work, it will get their attention and they can talk to you. So just that small message like, hi, professor, I attended this webinar where you were a panelist and you said this about that. It resonated deeply with me. I was wondering if I could set up a quick 15-minute chat to hear some more. 15 minutes. You don't have to ask for too much, but if it's a great conversation, it will go on for a long time. So just invest in that one email on LinkedIn.
That's some great advice. And I would also like to add that for those summer programs and internships and those kind of great opportunities that you already recommended, they always have a program administrator, right? There is a person listed on there that it kind of plays that role of student advocate. So feel free to reach out to them. They also like bringing the best students into the program. And I understand sometimes it can feel intimidating. I don't think I'm intimidating, but I do. I was the student once too. So I do think that it can be intimidating to just kind of cold call a professor. So I would recommend maybe approaching a program administrator first and saying, I'm a student from so-and-so. I'm interested in this program this summer. These are the areas that I'm interested in. Could you recommend some faculty that I could approach that are part of your program? And they can already give you some pointers, right? And that way maybe, or they can even send an introductory email on your behalf. So building relationships early that can set up introductions for you is also an easier way than just kind of straight up cold calling, if that feels very anxiety inducing. And I know it can be for some people.
Yeah. Those are great questions. Thank you so much.
All right, so we have couple of more minutes. So we don't have any questions right now. I do want to leave some time in questions at the end. But before we get to the end of our webinar, I wanted you to talk a little bit. I'm in the cancer biology field myself. So I know that sometimes biomedical science and cancer biology, I'm sure this is true for other fields, are not as welcoming to minorities or women. It used to be a white male dominated field for a long time. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your take on that, your experience, Since you're so involved in the advocacy work, where do you see that going?
I realized that change is coming when I actually moved to Caris and my boss was a woman, and she was in charge of the West, and the boss in charge of the East was also a woman. And I was like, what is going on? This is so fantastic. And so I'm not saying that things have changed and everything is great and they're so welcoming to women. No, you still have sausage fest on some calls and you're just like, really? No, I don't want to hear y'all compare your beards. Imagine how weird it would be if we all started comparing our body parts. Why are you doing this on a call? But I think that people are, for some reason, people equated, you know, let's say increase in diversity with a lack of quality. And it boggles my mind how they even came to that conclusion. And so people are starting to realize in this year of 2021 that that's not what it means. And so I am seeing more women, more Black women in positions of power in companies and positions of influence. But there's still a lot of work to do because, you know, a lot of change comes from the top, and we can do a lot of grassroots, but we need to change the population of the C-suite. The C-suite is still not super diverse at all, and it still needs to change. But I think that from talking to young students, I see that I thought I had fire. They have whole dragons in their systems, and they're bringing all of that into the workforce. And I can't wait to see them burn down all these institutions and build up better ones. So that's my take. I'm all for it.
I love it. Fantastic. So before we open up some more questions for the audience, I do want to remind everybody that we do have a student only, right? So all the professors will leave and you guys can ask Dr. Twum all the nitty gritty without us listening. So there's a student space only so that you guys can engage a little bit more with Dr. Twum, and that will be at 1:30. And there was a link with the meeting ID passcode, and the link has been posted on the chat. So if you want to go ahead and copy that or take note of that number so that you guys can join us at 1:30 if you're interested in participating in some more conversation, getting some more one-on-one advice, you know, talking to Dr. Twum about specific situations, etc. So, okay, so as questions come up, we will monitor the Q&A. But I just wanted to, you know, thank you for all of this input. And you are right, that concept, which is what we're trying to do, right, with the Synergy Grant and this Diversity in STEM series, is to change sort of that misconception that diversity somehow lowers quality, right? When we know, right, I was just at a talk by a graduate student for our NS colloquium that we have here, and she was using probably 17 different techniques, right? From molecular biology to biochemistry to mouse genetics to answer a specific question. So we know in science, the more diverse it is, the better we can address a question.
Yes. Yes.
Problem. So the same thing should translate up to the personnel level, right?
Yes, it should.
That we have, the more diverse scientists that we have collaborating together, the quality of our science is going to be improved, and we're going to better answer questions and solve problems. So I like that you're a champion for that work as well. Right, so we have about 10 minutes left in our webinar. We would love to hear from students or other people that are in the webinar. And Dr. Twum is happy to answer your questions. So go ahead and type those in the Q&A.
I think Dr. Usman
I have my hand up. And a question is coming in. And so I'm gonna do the question that just came in first, and then if there's time, I'll ask my question because it looks further out into the future for you. So the question from the student is, how did you build that confidence in yourself to where you felt like you actually knew what you were doing in your field? Do I need to reread that? I think I fumbled it.
No, I got it. Is this where I tell you I don't know what I'm doing?
Welcome to my life.
To be very honest, I think the minute I start feeling comfortable, I feel like I'm not learning. And that is a dangerous thing for a scientist, because a scientist is supposed to be eternally curious. What do they call it? High curiosity quotient. And so the minute I start feeling like I don't have anything else to learn, I'm like, oh, maybe I need to move on. So right now, the job I'm doing, I have absolutely zero training for it in terms of subject matter. Because I studied, so in cancer, you have the tumor and then you have the cells around the tumor. I studied the cells around the tumor. The job I do studies the tumor. And so what's happening is I'm taking the knowledge I know about the cells around the tumor and applying it to the cell, to the tumor itself. And it has been an upward, it's been quite the journey. It's been different. I can't say I'm building I'm so confident I know everything, but I look at how I used to give presentations 6 months ago to clients, and then I look at how I'm giving presentations now, and I've seen the growth. And if you want to build the confidence in what you're doing, you just have to study. You just have to practice. It's not gonna just happen in a snap of a finger. That's never gonna happen. I had a mentor who told me they used to practice their presentations in front of the mirror 50 times before they gave it. And so if you want to gain confidence in whatever you're doing, you just have to keep at it. You have to keep studying. You have to, be ahead of the times and see what is the new thing that's happening in this field. Do I need to know it? Do I need to understand it? What kind of words can I use to explain it to people? And how can I better understand it because if you understand it, then you can talk to people about it. So all I can say is you have to practice, you have to stay at it. And then the minute you feel like you know everything, it means you've gotten comfortable. It means it's gotten boring. So you got to move on and go learn something else. There's so much to learn. The world is so huge.
Indeed. So speaking of the world being so huge, what's next for you? If you were thinking 5 to 10 years out, don't you hate this question? But you're sort of, you're entering life right now and into the your profession as someone who has the potential to do lots of different things. And so what are you looking at doing? Not one thing, two things. Are there things that you're looking forward to trying out professionally, non-professionally perhaps, because those are important. And so just tell us a little bit about what your future thoughts are.
In a perfect world, I would have a philanthropy organization that brings STEM education to young girls in disadvantaged countries, especially my country of Ghana. I know that there are a lot of young girls in villages that are not even half exposed to what I was exposed to when I was growing up. And the world is changing. I don't want them to be left behind. And so that is what I would want to do. I don't know if it's going to take 10 years, it's going to take 20 years, but I want to be able to equip these young girls for the world that is changing around them. And I don't want them to be left behind. So yeah, just confessed my dream to you, Dr. Usman. What the heck? But for the next 5 years, I'm hoping that I can grow in this field. Cancer diagnostics is very interesting. There's so much you can do with it. The company I work for has many avenues that I can go into different teams and learn about what they're doing. So who knows, I could become a director or something and help, make cancer diagnostics more accessible to people who need it, because that's also a thing where people don't know that it's possible to sequence your tumor and figure out the better treatment for you instead of just being put on a treatment that might or might not work. So that is what I'm hoping.
So you were talking earlier about missing an opportunity to travel. So, your company has just said, hey, we think you need to get out more. So here's a month's pay. Where would you like to go travel for a month?
New Zealand.
Why?
Why?
I have my why. I want to hear your why. Because I would have said New Zealand would have been in my top 3.
Actually, it's a toss-up. It's a toss-up between South Korea and New Zealand, because South Korea, obviously because of K-pop, but they have such an interesting culture. Their food is fantastic. I want to eat all the street food in South Korea. I also want to experience the ridiculous speed of their internet, because I believe they have the fastest internet in the world, even in the subway. So I want to experience that. I've never been to Asia, so it would be good to put that in my passport. And I also started learning Korean, so it would be a great place to, practice the rudimentary Korean I speak. New Zealand, because it has all of the terrains I would like to explore, but in a controlled environment because it's an island. So if I could go hiking, I could go to the beach. I could, learn. I could snorkel. I could do so many things there, and I could get it all on one island. And of course, the sheep. I want to see the sheep. So, yeah, I would love to be in New Zealand for a month just to see the country, talk to the people, and maybe catch a rugby game. That would be great to see the All Blacks. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that would be fun. Well, I want to thank you for joining us today. I hope the folks who are on the call right now that are students can join us in half an hour, because I think it'll be a lot of fun to just have a casual conversation between you and Dr. Twum. So thank you so much for joining us today. And I will try and see you if I can sneak out of that nasty meeting I told you about, and see you when you talk to our critical race studies folks.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Twum. This conversation was lovely. I'm ready to go to New Zealand with you. You just call me.
Let's do it. We have so many travel plans. Let's go.
Dr. Usman will give you a month off, right? I can teach my classes from New Zealand.
Virtual.
Be a guest lecturer in my cancer bio class. It would all be fantastic.
That I would be honored. I would be highly honored.
That would be great. So it was lovely. Thank you for joining us. If there are no additional questions, we will let Dr. Twum take a break. And please join us. The meeting ID is posted on the chat. Clea, would you like to post that one more time in case somebody, I don't know if the messages disappear, so that they can grab that link, because once we end the webinar, that link will disappear. So take a moment to copy that down, and please join at 1:30 if you want to continue the conversation. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Did we tell you, Danielle, that this is recorded and will be on display on our webpage?
Yes, you did.
Okay.
Thank you.
Always, there's always asking for forgiveness, but I thought I'd ask for permission for this time.
No, I think
we hadn't talked about it already.
Yeah, I think Cleopatra did. I think we are still live.
I am sure we are. There's still 18 people listening to us.
Okay.
17.
Thank you so much, Dr. Twum. Thank you, Dr. Bisbal. You guys were awesome.
Yeah, Dr. Bisbal, that was lovely. Thank you so much.
It was so lovely chatting. It would have been great in person, but this was really fun. I kind of thought there were 40 other people listening to the
No, it was great. Thank you so much. You asked really good questions. And Dr. Usman, why would you ask me about that?
Well, I feel like every 10 years, and I'm coming on 70, so I'm due to do it again. Um, that, and my wife and I talk about this a lot. She's a biologist at the University of Houston. You know, is you come back and you kind of reflect about, okay, I've been doing something for a while. It's no matter whether it's great or not, right? And you ask, there's this feeling of what's next,
Yeah.
you know? And actually for me professionally, what's next is what I'm doing right now with this Howard Hughes project.
Yeah.
And so